Welcome to the Florida Real Estate and Entrepreneur Podcast, where we interview the best and the brightest business and real estate leaders. Our mission is to inspire and help 1,000 entrepreneurs to start and succeed in real estate and entrepreneurship. We will give you the exact playbook to succeed in your business through the experience of those who blaze the path. We're bringing the what's working today directly to you. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Florida Real Estate and Entrepreneur Podcast. My guest today is Mike McCloskey. Did I say that? Well, McCloskey.
McCloskey. You got it right. Yeah.
McCloskey. Okay.
People say McCloskey, so you got it right, actually. So.
All right. Cool. Yeah. I'm 2 for 2 on just taking a swing without pre-coordinating it. Last 2 I did, so I'm pumped about that. I'm really pumped to have you because Mike has this really cool, diverse background where he's been a part of really big organizations and businesses. Plus, he gets an opportunity to see and help other business owners from a unique perspective. He is the co-creator of the Apex Leadership Training Academy. Since he has so much business experience and he's seen so many businesses, this is what he does to help other business owners. He's a married man, been married for 33 years, which is really cool. I think my 19 years of marriage is admirable. Then I see somebody who made it to 33 and I'm like, all right, there's hope for me still.
Unfortunately, it's pretty rare these days. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It totally is, man. That's a shame. So, Mike, I'm super pumped to have you today, man. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. I've heard so many great things about that. I mean, I know we've connected, but I've heard so many great things about your podcast. I'm just excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, brother. Thanks. Okay. So where did business start for you? So some point you kind of veered off the 9-to-5 thing. Like, when did you get into business? How did it happen? And I mean, you've got a pretty long journey. So talk to us about that journey.
A few decades ago, back in long time ago, I've got an operations background mainly. And so I was an operations manager for a couple of companies and then moved my way up over, my career to a couple of, VP of operations roles with some fairly large companies. But for a short stint, I was a director of learning and development for a company that had about 60,000 people. And so my job was leadership competency training for the senior leadership team for anybody that was living from Chicago all the way to Hawaii. So Hawaii was a rough job, but somebody had to do it. I tried to get out there as often as I could, but they wouldn't let me. It's kind of funny. Anyway, so that's when I was employed back in the day. And so anytime a territory was really struggling, it was my job to kind of fly into that area, like the Northwest or Southwest or Midwest, somewhere in there, and then try to figure out what the root causes of that struggle were. Those struggles were, and then put in an action plan and help coach, train, and develop the teams there to help them get better and rejuvenate their business a little bit. And so it was really, really fun. And I realized at that point, there was always this gap, right, between operations and learning and development. There was always this, it's kind of like the most I can relate it to is like IT and operations. They speak different languages and, sometimes you need a translator to speak English, for them. And so I was able to connect those two really, really well because operations thinks learning and development is kind of just fluff and it's too, touchy feely, and it's not, really like, let's get to it and make some business happen and, drive results. And so I was able to tie those two together. And then once I left that position, I went on to be the vice president of business development for a nonprofit that was global. And that was really, really fun. And every time, though, I looked back, I thought to myself, this is the fun part. The most fun I ever had in my life, at a job was helping those territories, do really well and grow the business and watching people expand. And so I thought, I'm just going to one day just start a business where we just focus on people development, leadership development, and, giving presentations on that around the country. And ever since I started this about 7 years ago, I've loved it. Kind of like in that, we talk a lot about that natural zone people are in, where they really want to be. And that's where I want to be. And I've just been very fortunate to surround myself with people on the team that do all the things that I don't want to do. And they are extremely passionate about those things. So it works out really well for me. So that's kind of a brief background of my history there.
Yeah, it's extensive, actually. And I think what's cool is very few small businesses have the luxury of seeing the inner workings, the organization, the training, the leadership in a big company. 60,000 people is massive, like
Right.
literally massive company. Even
It's
a
almost
10,000
overly
person.
structured. It's almost overly structured in a 60,000 person company. You can't really think for yourself. There's a SOP for everything, and you have to follow everything.
Yeah.
So it's nice to work with a lot of small businesses now, to where I can have some more flexibility with to kind of help them with whatever their needs are. Much more fun to me.
Yeah, which I think is, which I hope we'll talk about today, which is, what are, you do have some competitive advantages being a small business, obviously being nimble and adaptable and having more flexibility is certainly one of them. Maybe you can give us some examples, but with what you're doing right now, you're just dive a little deeper into what your business looks like today. How are you helping businesses? What kind of businesses do you help? Like, what are you seeing in the business marketplace today?
Sure. Well, one of the things when I was still employed 8 years ago, I started working with a couple of companies just on the side, just to kind of help out with some things. And they're saying, like, the culture in this massive Goliath company that you're in is really, really good. It's strong. It permeates, kind of like what we, kind of always use, like Chick-fil-A, as a conversation for, a topic of culture and how people want to work there, and they don't have to really go out and recruit a lot. And they're saying, how do you get that in a 60,000 person company when, I can't do it with, 10 employees? And so I started working with just a few people on the side. And what I realized is a lot of companies spent a ton of time on what their operations were going to look like and what their business strategy was, but no one had a people strategy. And, there's older books out there like Good to Great and putting the right people in the right seats on the bus and all those different things. And it's talked about quite a bit, but very rarely do people actually put time and energy and some kind of a business plan together for their people strategy. And so that's where we saw one of the biggest gaps, and that's kind of what we attack. Most people don't realize they've got a people strategy issue until everyone's leaving or until they hire bad people. So that's when unfortunately, we have to come in retroactively instead of proactively sometimes, but it's an easy fix once we get in there.
I think that's really interesting, the people strategy. So maybe it's because what do you tell these people when you're like, hey, less KPIs, less operations, more people, and they're so scrappy. They're these smaller companies, there's a sense that they need to just, if it doesn't improve the bottom line directly, I can't be doing it.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's funny because a lot of times small companies, really small companies, have a tendency to hire people that they like and trust quickly because they know they can help them grow. And that's generally, unfortunately, friends and family. And so that gets you to a certain point, fairly quickly. But if those people aren't really built or have a resume for that particular role, it's fun, and everybody gets along really, really well. But then you get to a certain plateau where you just can't grow anymore. And so we want to make sure people have the right drives for some long-term growth for your business, not just a Band-Aid that's going to be a short-term cure.
I'm guessing that you guys have looked at this pretty hard, but I would assume there's a tangible cost to people turnover, to hiring new people, to training new people. And then when your churn on your people is high, that cost is compounding, I would assume.
Oh, it's horrible. And even worse, if you've got the wrong people in the wrong roles, then the worst case scenario is people mentally leave, but they physically stay and they actually don't leave. And now it's even worse because you've got people sitting around with clean desks starting at 2:00 and just sitting there twiddling their thumbs until 5. Can't wait to get out of there, and it's zero productivity. Versus the upside to that, like, dream team feeling, right, where you got people in the right roles and they don't even realize it's 5:00 and you're like, oh my gosh, it was another fast day. I love this stuff.
Yeah, and then they call that quiet quitting these days.
Yeah, that's right.
Quiet quitting. It's like, I'm still going to work, but they haven't fired me yet, but I'm not doing anything.
That's right. And then some people just get ghosted. They just never come back in again.
Crazy to me. I mean, when I look at least, me being primarily in the real estate industry, but, I came from 20 years in the military, which is a really big organization.
Oh, thanks for serving.
my pleasure, honestly. Like, it's probably better that I got to serve than I ever gave. You know, I probably got way more than I gave. I try to give more, but yeah, absolute honor.
What branch were you
20 years in the Marine Corps certainly changed my life. So
I bet it did.
Grateful every day for that opportunity. But that's a big organization, right? Like that, you're talking million people across the Department of Defense, probably more than that. I don't even know the number. I know the United States Marine Corps
sounds like nothing anymore, right?
The United States Marine Corps is about 175,000.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you come in to the Marine Corps, there's a 1 to 3 leader to lead ratio. The hierarchy just looks typically 1 to 3. Sometimes it'll be like 1 to 5, but typically it's 1 to 3.
Okay.
So at the very lowest level, you have a team with a team leader. The team leader has 3 people under them. Then above the team is the squad leader. The squad leader has 3 team leaders under him, who then has 3 people under him. Then there's the platoon commander, who has 3, squad leaders under him, who have 3 team leaders under them, who have 3 people under them. So every person basically is a 1 to 3 leader to lead ratio. I first enlisted. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. I first enlisted.
That's good.
I was at the very bottom of that totem pole, right? I had a team leader, then I became a team leader. And I first led somebody in a very serious way. I led three other humans. Then, you develop your skill. You have more time and experience in the organization. You become that squad leader. You have a squad of 13 total. So you're responsible for 11 other folks or 12 other folks, but 3 of them are directly reporting to you, right?
Yeah.
And then at some point they were, I don't know, I guess they were dumb enough to commission me and send me to college and make me an officer. So I did that. And on that side of it, you start off commanding a platoon, which is between 40 and 50 people.
Yeah.
Right. And then your next rung of leadership is like company command. You command the company of 200 people, and then battalion of 1,000. And you're just kind of bred to lead and grow people. But there's a couple things. One, the military puts people first, right? The mission always, but people first.
That's right.
So in order to do the really terrible thing they might ask you to do, like, you really have to take care of your people.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's running to attack the machine gun bunker because if you don't have trust built in them, they don't trust that they actually need to do that for this to work. It's just a different level. But we don't have a bottom line.
Yeah.
We're not worried about KPIs. We're just worried about life, limb, and eyesight,
That's right.
So I found it to be a little different style of leadership. We're also bureaucratic. It's heavy red tape and a lot of nonsense at that level of an organization. So what are maybe some of the advantages of being a smaller company compared to being so rigid like we were in the military?
There's several benefits to it. The downside is, you as an owner, you just have to wear lots of hats, right? So when I first started the company, it was just me, 7.5 years ago. And I am really, really good at bookkeeping. I'm amazing at it, but I hate it with a passion. Like, I just want to I can't deal with this, but if the world came to an end tomorrow, I could get a job doing it. I could sell my way into that role,
For sure.
But it's one of those things where, you kind of have to just adapt, and you're not going to love every aspect of it. And so that's one of the cons of being small, is there's not enough people to delegate to. Like, when you start to grow and get a little bit bigger and have people in their natural roles. But the pro definitely is you've got a lot of maneuverability. You're very agile. The owner can make a decision very, very quickly. There's not all that red tape that you were referring to earlier. There's not 700 committees that have to listen to it, and then it needs to go to the House, and then the Congress, and then the Pentagon, and then whoever else needs to hear it. It can literally just be done with not even a swipe of a pen, just a verbal decision to, do something different. And that's really kind of nice, because the minute an owner says, hey, this is the direction I want to go, you spend some time with them, make sure that their vision is incredibly clear and that they really do believe in that vision, because, once they're kind of going down that path, it's kind of hard to turn, even for a small business. You can change strategy a little bit, but if the entire vision changes, that makes it a little bit more difficult. So we make sure that the vision's actually locked in, first. But that's one of the biggest things. It's just you're very agile and you can move very, very quickly. And if you've got some funding on the outside, that makes it even better because then we can bring in a few team members to surround you, with the people you need in place to launch very, very quickly. You're off to the races very, very quickly.
Yeah, I find a lot of small business owners and kind of in our world are, I don't know, they can bring some revenue in, but my assessment is it is actually easier to grow a slightly bigger company when you have enough resources to pay for the right people.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Because the people are the things that is the engine behind any business.
That's right. Yep.
There's a person doing the marketing. There's a person doing the sales. If you have the best person in the world at those two things,
right,
your flywheel of revenue will just be spinning like crazy.
That's right. And if they can be bought into your bigger vision, those people don't always have to be expensive at first. If you can sell the vision and you can kind of work through and build some core values together that you all can rally behind, more people will stay for that than they will, having a ping pong table, in your office or a pool table or, beanbag chairs like people tried to do 10 years ago. People today, they want to feel like they're working with somebody or for a cause that's bigger than them, where they're actually helping people. It's not like our great-great-grandparents, when they were in a job for 40 years and they hated every single minute of it because they were in a union or because they got great benefits.
But they got to watch.
They got to watch. Yeah, it was
after 25 years
on it. Yeah, right. Yeah. And now people look back and they're like, this is just not for me, and they'll quit. Going back to the ghosting conversation we had, they'll just quit in a heartbeat. They don't care. If they don't find there's a connection with the vision and what they're doing and where they fit into that vision, they're gone.
Gosh, this is such good discussion. Vision is one of those subjective things. It's kind of squishy. It can be concrete. You can certainly cast some specifics in your vision, but I find we get excited about it. I'm talking about all the business owners out there. We get excited about it when we're doing it, but we don't live it. And there's a correlation, actually. This is a really important thing to me. The military actually does the exact same thing, but they call it something else. In the military, anytime you take command of something like 100 people, 200 people, 1,000 people, you write what's called your commander's intent or your command vision. Basically the same thing. And it's you casting on, in the most concise way, one page of what the vision of this organization is over this time period and how we're going to operate. And what I saw the most successful military leaders didn't just, they would write that page and think about it deeply. And then they would live it during their time in command. They would make decisions through that lens. They would live it. Yeah. The ones I saw that weren't as successful, they wrote it because it was a check in the box. They put it on the wall and they never looked at it again. Right.
That's right. There's a guy that we're working with. He used to work at a Porsche dealership. And they've got this really nice real estate investment company. And I've probably got probably 35% of all my clients are in real estate somehow. It's kind of a weird connection. Just keep coming one referred to another and another. It's interesting. He's in the St. Louis area, and they started this company doing really, really well. And we're talking about now strategy, a little bit on the finance side, what his vision was for the financials of his company. The main thing we focus on is the overall vision of the business, but that came up in a conversation. And he was talking about how he really wants to, buy a 911. Of course, he used to work at Porsche. He knows 911s really, really well. He's got more money coming in now. And I said, tell me how that fits into your vision for your business. And he goes, well, I think it'll do this. And I said, no, I want you to read your vision. Don't make up some, crap and tell me something. I want you to read your vision and tell me how that fits into it. He goes, well, it really, really doesn't right now based on my financial situation and what I really want my goals to be, for investing. And I said, okay, so why do you want a vehicle? And he says, well, I, just need an extra vehicle, blah, 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 for some, him and his wife are about to have a baby. And I said, yeah, well, a Porsche makes total sense. 911 makes total sense for, you and your wife and your newborn baby to, have it. So, he read through his vision again and he finally decided on an F-250. that can be used for the business. We used it for a write-off, and he, hauls around all this different stuff for the construction sites, and then he delegates all that stuff out. And I know that sounds kind of simple and almost cheesy, but making those decisions for your vision instead of just letting your impulses take over makes everything so different. That was about 6 months ago, and his business is thriving even more now. And he's able to spend that money wisely. He'll be able to buy a 911 in probably another year or two anyway. And he'll probably be able to pay cash for it even better because it's just he's doing it the right way. He's building his business first based on the vision, and everything else, the lifestyle comes later. Yeah,
the little delayed gratification there, and it's we have this disease as entrepreneurs that we just we can't not see opportunity in things we want, and we jump around on things that we probably shouldn't be jumping around on. So I don't blame them, but it's something we've got to fight every day.
Right. That's right.
And I'm sure you see it a ton. Tell me some. So you got however many businesses you're working with right now, and I'm sure. What would you say the revenue range is in the businesses you work with?
It ranges from, we've got companies that just have 6 people in that, do $100,000 and some $1,000 a year, net profit. We've got businesses that have around 23,000 that are under contract, and they do in the millions, tens of millions of dollars a year, obviously, a quarter, actually. Some of the bigger, more global ones, we've got, Quantum Metric, for example, is one that's global, and we've got a global contract with them. So we actually do things in a lot of different languages for them, but it's pretty interesting because the things we do, when we're talking about focusing on people, that's a universal thing. I don't care if you've got 2 people on your team, or if you've got, to your point, over 1 million people in the Marines. You've got people issues, or you're going to have them. And so what we offer actually pretty much fixes all those things. You mentioned one thing I want to touch base on real quick. You mentioned in the Marines, trust. You talked about, that's life and death. It's a little bit different type of trust. A more advanced type of trust that you need for a regular business. But I was recently working with a city outside of Nashville, and their leadership team had a big issue with kind of moving some initiatives forward that they really wanted to move forward. And so I spent some time with them. We spent 2 days together in their office, and people kept saying, hey, if I share this, can this just stay in the room? Or I want to talk about somebody on my team. Can this just stay in the room? And it was said so many times. And I was like, what is going on? And I said, why do you guys keep saying that? What's the issue here? And there was dead silence in the room. It went from being very participative to, no interaction whatsoever. And finally someone spoke up and said, when we say things in these meetings, it gets out and we don't know who's doing it. And so I shut down the PowerPoint, and we spent the next 2 hours talking about the importance of trust and building trust with each other, and walking out arm in arm, with the understanding that, hey, if I can say something, in here and it not get out, that means the world to me. We spent 2 hours on that, and it was shocking. I mean, it got to a yell match at certain times, but it all starts with trust. I'm glad you mentioned that earlier. If you don't trust the team you're working with, you might as well just hang it up, because there's going to be a lot of issues.
Without trust, it's a house of cards, really. I mean, you have to really, and trust is something you earn and you develop, and it's part of the culture. And, you say something that is going to happen, and you do something, right? Yeah. Like if I say it, I got to do it. And there's so much under the hood of that, of leading by example. There's oftentimes I see the worst organizations have what we call a say-do gap. Mm-hmm. They say something, but what they do is different. There's a gap between what they're saying and what they're doing, and it erodes trust in an immense way, and it's really problematic for any organization, really.
And kids see that from the time they're little. Don't drink, don't smoke, as the parents are sitting there smoking.
Oh yeah, why can't? And then they say why, and you say because I said, and then it's like, right. Why would I believe you? Nice. Why should I listen to you?
Yeah, because I said that's good enough.
Yeah, well, it's like you don't have to say anything, because you're setting an example every day in the way you live. I'm curious, what I'm a part of a small real estate company. I'm a part of a large, I would say a small real estate mastermind community. I probably have between 28 and 40 employees at any given time across our companies. What could maybe a smaller company learn from a bigger company? And what would you say the commonalities between the most successful companies, regardless of size, are?
Yeah, I think actually a large company can learn a lot from a small company as well, probably just as much. But the number one thing that I always see is, how do you, find and recruit really, really good talent, and then how do you retain them? We call it basically from hire to retire. How do you find them, and then how do you keep them? A lot of people don't really know how to interview well. They don't really know what they're looking for. The roles are not very, very clear, to begin with. And so we kind of help define all of that and the drives that are needed in order for that person to be successful. If we can match the drives, kind of like what I was saying, like for my bookkeeping role when I had multiple hats, that kind of falls into the drive of formality. It's that drive to conform to rules and structure and things like that. And, I don't have a lot of that. I like thinking outside the box. I like thinking, like, hey, how can we do something different versus, falling into the status quo. And so, but fortunately, I guess, bookkeeping is all about, rules and structure. And so that's why I don't, kind of just naturally land there. And so when I find people that naturally land into their kind of like gifted space, using data, then people always thrive. I mean, those are the ones that just say, like, I can't believe I get to work here, and they love every minute of it.
Yeah, I love that. We have this person on our team. Her name's Medina, and she loves spreadsheets and data. Like, I ask her to, like, I really want to know this, and is there a way to automate this? And she literally is texting me on the weekend going, I'm so excited to do this. And I'm like, thank God, because I want the data. I just don't want to go do what you're doing. And it's cool to see somebody who's high conformity, high details, really just love doing it. And I'm low details, high driving people, but I'm like, I'm so glad you want to do that. Let's do this.
That's right.
This is awesome. And,
we need everybody. Sometimes people say, well, why don't I just hire someone that's opposite of me, for a different role? And I always say, that's not what you want to do. You want to hire the perfect person for the role, not just literally somebody opposite of you. Because somebody opposite of you might be fine in some roles, but somebody opposite of you might not. They might be a disaster in another role. So, match the people with the role. We have, you mentioned, Predictive Index earlier, and we've used that for, several decades, and we know it frontwards and backwards, and give insights that most companies can't or, don't know how to do on that. And, it's really funny because, when people line up really well with a job model that's created through those surveys, that's the big plus. Because once we have that data, then we're off to the races. I can coach, train, and develop them immediately instead of ramping up over several months as I get to know them. And, that's a big perk of ours, I think, as well.
Yeah. Can you talk about that? So for those who don't know what, a thing like Predictive Index is, what is it? Well, how do companies use it, and what's the value of using it for hiring, for managing, for leading, for training?
Yeah. So, Predictive Index, and by the way, I'll be happy to give you a link. If anybody would like to participate in one, any of your listeners can log in and take one. I can, I'm happy to review it with them. But it's literally a 6-minute survey with 0 questions. It's phenomenal. It's been around since 1955. It was actually invented by a guy in World War II for the military, trying to figure out why his bombing group was much more successful than others. Speaking of military. And so now, ironically, the military pays for it to be a client instead of just taking it when he left. But anyway, and so it's a brief 6-minute survey. It allows you to tell us about yourself and what your natural drives are. So there are 4 drives that are looked at. That's dominance, how much control you like to have over, or influence you like to have over people and projects. And there's extroversion, and that's to what degree you like to connect with people and how quickly. Everybody likes to connect to a certain degree, but some people are way more extroverted than others. Patience level, that's your drive for stability. Some people have a low patience level and want to drive change, and some people have a high patience level and they're looking for more of a stable, steady, routine type of job, right? And then the formality, which is what we just spoke about, and that's the drive to conform to rules and structure. Some people are very structured. They've got their closet organized by color, all that kind of stuff. And other people could care less about, being organized, but they want to delegate that stuff out. They prefer to be the visionary type of person and come up with great ideas and then have implementers or integrators or chief operating officers go out there and implement them. So those are some of the things we look at. There's a lot more to it, but that kind of gives us the jump start we need to start coaching very quickly.
I'm high dominance, social is higher.
Okay.
My patience is very low.
Okay.
And I can do a little detail, but I don't want to stay in the sheets for too long.
So there are different names there's about 17 different profile names. That sounds like a persuader almost. Is that what you are?
Persuader, and I modify as like a pretty extreme architect.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Yep. Sounds very similar. So that's similar to my profile. That's why I was laughing kind of, and so, yeah, we should compare those one time after this call.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, dude, that's great. I would say personality profiles have been a significant driver for success across all the businesses I'm a part of, because you're figuring out what somebody is going to be best at and feel good to them. They're going to be excited about doing it just based on who they are at their core, rather than them just selling you on getting the job. And then you find out that they have zero detail love in their inner core. You're asking them to do something that burns them out. So,
that's right. And we know when somebody has to adapt more to kind of fit into a role, it just uses more energy. And so those are the people that are just kind of mentally done by 2 o'clock.
Yeah. And then you don't get longevity out of that person. And eventually you end up turning that person over. It ends up costing you far more in the long run. So using a predictive index in your hiring process can be extremely powerful. Not only it will make you way more money because you're not going to you'll be hiring the right person, the right personality for that particular job role. And it's going to force you to really dial in that job role and understand what kind of person you're looking for, which I think is so, so critical. If you've ran business for any amount of time and have turned over positions, it's the most painful thing we do.
It is by far. Yep.
It's terrible. Like, think if you have a sales team, a natural high turnover position in the first place, man, if I could get somebody for 2 years instead of 1, like think about how much time, training, and money that would save you. So it is a really, really big deal. And I'll tell you something, Mike, I'll tell you a secret. Can't tell anybody else.
Okay. I won't tell anybody, just between us.
I'm using this personality profile to hire, and on probably a half a dozen occasions, my ego gets in the way and I feel like I know best.
Oh, we've never heard that before.
And I'm like, I don't know. This person just is good. Like we need this person in this job role. Yep. I know what their profile says, but I think it'll be this way.
Yep.
To a T, what they said would happen happened with every one of them. And none of those people are with me today.
That's right.
Because it wasn't the right personality for the right job role. And even though they presented well in their interview, the resume looked good, it wasn't their best position to do their best work.
That's right. Everybody looks at the resume and their core values. We call that the heart, kind of what makes them tick, right? And the resume is incredibly important. Obviously, if you want to be a surgeon or whatever, I can't go apply to be a surgeon just because, I find it interesting. So resumes do matter sometimes. But nobody looks at what we call the head, and that is the behavioral piece, which is what Predictive Index gets, and the cognitive, how quickly someone will learn a new skill. No one looks at that stuff. And so that's a big, big gap in hiring. And you're right. When you do look at it and then your gut overrules science, it's kind of like if you had all your KPIs for the day and you go, you know what? No, my gut feeling says that we actually closed 30 deals this month, when the actual data tells you did 10. It doesn't matter what your gut says. The data is going to be right.
It's data driven. And yeah, you're absolutely right, man. It's really cool. So yeah, I'll definitely get a link and make sure it's in the show notes. So if you're listening to this is actually, it's more powerful than just hiring, actually. You will learn so much about yourself. And this isn't like the kind of off the streets EJNT type Myers-Briggs. This is like really advanced science-based stuff with high accuracy. So I would recommend, if you're listening to this, to click the link and take the survey just to see your own results. The awareness you will get, you will have so many ahas like, that's why I am the way I am. That's why I really don't like talking to Susie, because she's so slow and methodical, yet I'm so fast-paced and driven.
Yep.
I've got to communicate better. I got to learn how to communicate better. And then you start to learn how to get the best out of people because you know who you are and how you are. So it's really cool. I highly, highly recommend, if you're listening to this, just click the link in the show notes and take the test just so you can learn about your own personality.
Yeah. Cornell University did this amazing study a few years ago, and they found out that the number one predictor of success is self-awareness on the leadership team.
Wow.
And so it ties in exactly with what you just said. I mean, it was the number one predictor, and it was also the number one predictor of what your bottom line is going to look like. The higher level of self-awareness the leadership team had, the better your P&L looked.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Well, Mike, listen, I want to say thank you so much for spending time with us today, educating us on businesses, the people part of business, which is, the common core thing that's in every single business.
That's right. Yeah.
So really appreciate you for coming on today, man. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks. I can't thank you enough.
All right. Thanks for listening.